Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program with myself, Martin Blackham, from our studios in Jerusalem. Tumultuous events are happening in the world as we come into the studio. There's coronavirus is particularly affecting everybody, and we've also had in the news our good friend Rabbi Yehudah Glick. It says former Likud MK Yehudah Glick arrested, handcuffed on Temple Mount. This was in the Times of Israel. And then in Israel National News it says, police search Yehudah Glick's home. So we're going to be talking about these serious events that have happened, what's happening with the Temple Mount, what's happening in Jerusalem. Rabbi Yehudah Glick is originally from New York and is a former member of Israel's parliament. He served as the executive director for the Temple Institute and has appeared on BBC's Hard Talk as well as Israel's I-24 News. In 2014, he survived an assassination attempt by an Islamic jihadist gunman when he was shot 4 times. He's a strong activist for comprehensive freedom for Jews on the Temple Mount and is the president of the Shalom Foundation. So great to have you with us. Thank you so much for coming across. So let's go straight into the current events. You had this unfortunate event on Temple Mount. We know that it can be tricky on Temple Mount. There are various things that happen from time to time. So maybe you can tell us what happened and what's happening on Temple Mount.
Okay. Well, first of all, shalom, and it's really so always exciting to be back with you, Martin, and to be back with Israel First. The corona, as you said, has really taken us up, and we don't know where the future is leading us, but it's a reminder for God that nothing is for granted, and the fact that things are going so well.
And the frailty of humans.
Yes, everything is so fragile, and therefore we have to remind ourselves to thank God for all the great things that happen to us on a regular day basis. As you know, I've been ascending Temple Mount for already more than 3 decades. In the past year, ever since I established the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation, I go up every single Tuesday. I go up with a list of names, people who go onto our website at shalomjerusalem.org, and they leave prayer requests. And I go up and I read the prayer requests, and we have national prayers. We had a prayer for the coronavirus. We had a prayer for Australia when there were fires there. We had a prayer for Turkey when there was a big earthquake there. We have, in our eyes, Temple Mount is the universal, not just the national venue. So once in a while, the police there are a little afraid. That morning, it was a few weeks ago, one of the policemen was really intense, and he wanted us to go. I was accompanied by 2 governors, two congressmen, and we were guiding them on the Temple Mount, and they were seeing. But one of the policemen was like, really, maybe you guys go faster, catch up. There's another group. We don't want too many people walking around there alone on Temple Mount. And suddenly he decided I wasn't walking fast enough, and he jumped on me and he put me down. And it happened very fast. They immediately said it. They arrested me and they put handcuffs on me. A few minutes later, the officers came and calmed them down and told them to remove the handcuffs. We walked and we had a little bit of an investigation, and then I was let free. In the evening, they claimed they were missing a few papers that I apparently accidentally walked off with. But these are curiosities. These are situations that are less of the importance. The importance is the fact that the Temple Mount is becoming a house of prayer.
Right.
It's wonderful. I go up there every Tuesday morning. I broadcast live on Facebook, on Twitter. It'll be a world center of bringing the word of God to the peoples of all nations, as God said to Abraham. Through you will be a blessing to all the peoples of the world. And here, first, we have a group, Shalom, talking to them. But here we have a group from China, and we'll see here. Look here, right over here, we have thousands of people visiting the Temple Mount, peace and quiet. We're passing by the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is actually off the original historical venue of the Temple Mount. This is the addition. Shalom, hi. Beseder, welcome. Where are you from?
Italy.
Italy, okay. Shalom. Shalom, welcome.
We're putting for you at home. We're putting the information on the screen. How they can watch that.
Video, and I video all people who any prayer requests. I go up the Temple Mount, and people who sign in, and as I said before, ShalomJerusalem.org, they send their prayer requests. We go up and mention their names on Temple Mount, and it's really becoming the heart of the world of mankind. Temple Mount, as it should be. It's, I always say it's a two-way direction issue. With the one thing on the one dimension is that man talking to God, the house of prayer for all nations, the center of prayer. At the same time, it's the center of the Word of God. We teach Torah from Zion comes out Torah and the Word of God from Jerusalem. And I do a lot of Torah teaching, sometimes from the Temple Mount itself, sometimes from my office in Jerusalem. We're now also trying, I don't know what the coronas lead us, but now we're working very intensively on the first International Bible Conference, which will take place hopefully in Jerusalem in January 2021 and 24th or 28th of January 2021. But the concept is really, after 70 years that Zionism was a national movement, it's now going to become a universal movement. We see that the strongest nation in the world has recognized Jerusalem as our capital. That's one step, because recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's political capital is one thing, but the main thing is really turning Jerusalem into the capital of the world, the capital of God in the world. And here is what we're doing in Shalom Jerusalem. So I said once in a while, I try not to get aggravated if one policeman is a little overdoing his job.
I was going to just say...
I've been on Temple Mount again several times since then, and my relationship with the policeman is usually very, very friendly. And also whenever I go there, I see groups, and we're very friendly. I now have groups from Indonesia following me on a regular basis. We have groups from Germany following me on a regular basis, and groups from all over the world. And we really want to open Shalom Jerusalem prayer centers around the world, because we repeat the sentence, pray for peace of Jerusalem, but it's not the true translation. I think it's a mistaken translation, because we're not praying for the peace of Jerusalem in Jerusalem. We're praying for a Jerusalem peace in the world. Because a Jerusalem peace is not tolerance. It's not, I dislike you, but I'm willing for my interest to be nice to you. The Jerusalemite peace is a godly peace. It's an inclusive peace. It's a place where we're all part of one big puzzle. And this is the concept. We're now working on opening prayer meeting centers all over the world called Shalom Jerusalem Prayer Centers, because we want Shalom Jerusalem all over the world.
And if they'd like to be involved, they can contact the office and speak to you.
Yeah, please do. We're waiting for your contact. As I said, ShalomJerusalem.org. You can go into my YouTube channel, Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. I broadcast the Torah teachings from all throughout the Bible, and the concept is really the insight of Jerusalem in the Bible.
Now the actual, I've just got a picture here of the Temple Mount, because some people you'll be watching and they'll be saying, Yehudah, well, what is the Temple Mount? Where is it? We're a bit confused.
Yeah.
They've got a
bridge,
the western wall is there, and this is basically the Temple Mount that we can see. Most people will have seen this part because it's the...
Yeah, because you have to understand that the Temple Mount is 25 times the size of the Western Wall Plaza. And the Western Wall Plaza, which is over here, which only is also a piece of the Western Wall, because the Western Wall of the Temple Mount is almost 500 yards long, 488 yards long. And the Western Wall Plaza is like a small part of it, 60 yards. But actually the Temple Mount is surrounded by all four sides with walls. The southern wall is a very well-known one, and the temple, the Muslim mosque is over here. This building, which is the Dome of the Rock, was built to protect the holy rock of the foundation stone of the world and with the location of the temple. So when we go up the temple, there's like a ramp over here, we go in here, and we surround the whole Temple Mount, and we go around. The place I was arrested was like somewhere over here. The policeman wanted me to catch up to a group that was over here. He wanted me to run, and I said, listen, on Temple Mount, we walk with fear of God. But as I said, The Temple Mount, this is the place where God says He chose to rest His divine presence. This is the house of prayer for all nations, and this is the location, the venue of the temple, first, second, and third.
Mm-hmm. Now, if people want to visit, how do they know they want to be respectful, they don't want to walk where the temple is?
So
how can they know?
You can contact us on shalomjerusalem.org. We try to answer all emails. But also, you have to know that the temple majorly stood in the center where the...
I've got another picture, Yehudah.
Oh, yeah.
I've got pictures today. This is the temple. Is that pretty much where you would say it is?
It's pretty much where it is, because I think it's a little bit more to these. This is just to see what we say. This is the eastern wall.
Right.
And the entrance to the temple is from east. The Holy of Holies is on the west. It's like saying that the sun and the moon, which rise at the east and set in the west, are actually prostrating to God. And
wow.
So this is where the temple stood. And the western wall is because the closest to the western side. But the praying on the western wall began when Jews were not allowed onto the Temple Mount. Today, people are allowed onto the Temple Mount. And I call people, come to the Temple Mount. It's important that we turn the Temple Mount into a prayer center, the world center of prayer. It's important that we remind ourselves that the Temple Mount is the place that God said, come, and turn this place into a world center of shalom. And this is where we do it. We come here, and we really don't want to hear what we used to hear, the harassment and the incitement. We want to hear the words of talking to God. And so before we go up to Temple Mount, we wash our hands and wash our bodies on the physical level, but actually we cleanse in our souls to standing in front of God. And that's the idea. The idea is standing in front of God, saying to God, I've cleaned my heart from all negative emotions, from anger, from jealousy, from agony. And here I am to stand in front of you and to be an instrument, a tool in your hands. And then you can raise your prayer to God.
And do you feel like there's a connection between you because of your ancestors who were in the temple and the Jewish people and the history of Israel? Do you feel a connection when you go up with the priests and the shofar blowing and the offerings?
You have to understand that what we are now witnessing in our generation is the fulfillment of the prophecies. And we have this book. It's the bestseller. It's been printed in over 3 billion copies. It's been translated into almost 1,000 languages. And the concept of this book is that God chooses the people of Israel. He says to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, your descendants will be like the stars of the heaven, the sand of the earth. But he says there's one purpose, so that you will serve as a blessing to all the families of the earth. And that's the idea. So if we, for 70 years, we had this country building ourselves, developing our economy and developing our infrastructure, today we are turning Zionism into a universal movement. And that means turning Jerusalem into the center of prayer to God. So when we are talking here, when we go up to the temple and teach Bible from its source, we're teaching the Word of God. And I'm saying even Christians who believe know that the beginning of Christianity was there where Jesus went up and turned over the tables. And we believe that God chooses Jesus and to really spread out the Word of God to the nations. And so when God chooses the people of Israel to come back to their land after they were scattered all over the world, now it's our job to make sure that this is a source of blessing to the entire world. And what we see today, where in the past Israel was praying for water, today in the development of what we're doing, Israel has 70% of our water goes through a process of taking seawater, going through a process of alimentation and turning it into drinking water. We're guiding the world also, by the way. We have the ways that everybody in the world is driving according to the ways. It's our patent, but now it's really the concept of bringing the blessing of Jerusalem, the blessing of God to the world.
Now I wanted to ask one question. I always find this very interesting. It's about the foundation stone, which is currently
under the dome of the rock.
Currently, it's always under the dome of the rock. This is the foundation stone of the
According-
universe?
According to our tradition, it's the foundation stone of the world, of the universe. But I think it's more a symbolic meaning. It's
Right.
we have to, the Babylonian tower. Everybody had to speak the same language. Everybody had to be the same, and have the same thoughts. God says, no, I don't want that. I want every nation to be different, every person to be different. I created everyone in the image of God, but I want us to all be part of one big puzzle. So what actually we're trying to do is create the harmony. And so the foundation stone means this is the place where the source of energy. So I tell people, we come to Temple Mount, we're recharging our spiritual batteries, reconnecting. And then we can go back home and bring the light and love of God back to our communities, to our families, to ourselves. So this is the concept we're trying to teach in Shalom Jerusalem. And the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation means the foundation of the world is through Shalom, which is God's name, which doesn't only mean peace, it means inclusiveness, it means completeness, it means comprehensiveness through harmony. And so the foundation stone, it's the source of centrality of the world to God.
Now, one of the questions some people ask, and has become a bit of a thorn in some people's side, is that the temple wasn't really on Temple Mount, but it was in the city of David. But
that's a theory that's been somehow running around the last few years. It has no basics to it. All the archaeologists totally disagree with it. There is no real reason to think that that's the truth. We know that the temple, that the city of David was on the slope, and the Temple Mount was on the top of it, and the Temple Mount is the top of the city of David. So it's no reason why you should build the temple in a valley.
Right.
If it's built, it says on the high of hills.
And I like that the Soreg is something. I don't know if our friends at home are familiar with the Soreg, but I found it on one of the diagrams of the top of Temple Mount, and the Soreg, you can see it even today. Which isn't in the city of David, it's on Temple Mount.
And by the way, in one of the books that we put out, it's called The Arise and Ascend, and we really have, it's like a guide to the Temple Mount. It's a private tour guide, but really, you go through the whole Temple Mount, you can actually see what it represents and how it serves as a center, including the timelines, including the explanation of every single thing you see on the Temple Mount, and what was there and what is there. So I think claiming that the claim that Temple Mount is in the city of David is really it's a theory that has no true basis, and I don't think it should be even repeated again and again. I don't know why it became so popular in the last few years. It's against tradition, and it's against archaeology, and there's no real serious person who's exploring, and there's no real serious researcher who believes in that theory.
And the Temple Mount Sifting Project, which people can also look at, has a lot of the artifacts.
That's one of the strong proofs. I mean, you see in the dirt of the Temple Mount all the different layers from the Canaanite time, through the time of the kings, through the time of the Babylonians, and all the way through the Byzantine times, and the Crusaders, and the Islamic times. And you see that all of Jerusalem is there, and there's no other place in Jerusalem where you can actually find everything, including worship idols, including army, ammunition, and arms. We see this is the heart of it. And God says that He promises that will be the center of the world.
And do you think it's the connection between the Jerusalem above and the Jerusalem below?
It has to be, because God, but when we talk about Jerusalem above, it doesn't mean that God left the land. Though in the beginning of Ezekiel, it's the description of the chariot, or the wagon there, going out to exile, and the divine presence leaving home. But it's a journey, and we're coming back. And you can tell Ezekiel that the bones ain't dry anymore. You can tell Jeremiah that Jerusalem is not isolated like a widow anymore. And you can even tell Zechariah that children are playing in the streets of Jerusalem. So the Temple Mount is waking up. And just like the people of Israel, the land of Israel, the language, the Temple
And
Mount.
there's the sacrifice, Abraham coming up to Mount Moriah,
binding his son.
binding his son, and there's the ladder into heaven.
All of this takes place on Jerusalem, on Temple Mount, but it was for 1,000 years. The two center temples of the people of Israel. The whole Bible talks around the comfort for Israel, the punishing Israel, the destruction of the Jerusalem. It's all like a dialogue between us and God. And now we're at the point where we're coming back home and reconnecting to Father in heaven in his palace. This is his palace, but his kingdom is the entire world. So we're facing to build him the palace which he obligated us to build, so that he can rest his divine presence among his entire kingdom, which is the whole world.
And the synagogues, I mean, this is a very interesting book. I don't know if it's so easy to get hold of. It's called Jerusalem, the Eye of the Universe.
Are Kaplan, yes.
Very good book.
Very
recommended.
Fruitful author, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan.
And
he talks a lot about the spiritual sides of those who try to deepen their thought and deepen their connection. And I think the idea of understanding what Jerusalem is all about is definitely very well put in by Rabbi.
And the synagogues, if you go to a synagogue anywhere in the world, they're built so that you can pray towards Jerusalem.
It's not only on a geographical level it's trying to I would say, tune in so you can broadcast there and you can receive the word of God from there.
Now, you were working in the Knesset to advance the temple, Jerusalem, your office, Jerusalem
of Peace was my office in the Knesset, and we had Bible sessions in the Knesset.
And so, are you going to do things more in the Knesset, or are you passing the baton on to someone?
First of all, I'm not unique. God did not choose me as a sole blessing only for myself. I was there to serve the people. And I'm not member of the Knesset now, and there will be others who will be serving the Knesset and will be using the Knesset. As soon as the Knesset is finally sits, unfortunately we're a little bit of in a dead end here with the political system here in Israel.
But but the strange thing is, with the coronavirus, it seems like the government's in recess, and suddenly countries are becoming in recess, and it's just kind of odd.
Something godly is happening. I'm sure God has a message. I think, it's interesting that the whole world is united now. And you see, the corona is hitting Iran, Italy, and Iran is like the center of Islam. Rome is the center of Christianity in the world, and Israel and China, which is the center of idol worshiping in a way. And it's falling down together, and it should be rebuilding together. It's like I vision a world movement towards falling down and standing up, and I think that God is bringing a message that it's the time that we all unite. It's the time that for us to really announce His kingdom in the world, and I'm sure Israel is going to play a major role. I'm quite sure that the Israeli scientists are going to find the vaccination and bring healing to the world. We can only pray. I do want to pray to God that as little as amount of people suffer, and that God puts the wisdom in the heads of those who are working on finding the healing. And we really know how to bring healing, physical, mental, emotional, psychological, to all. And let's all unite to thank God.
And if people, if you're watching today and they'd like to find out more information, they can go to the
ShalomJerusalem.org. Right. ShalomJerusalem.org is a website that really shares with the world also biblical understanding of daily news, but also connecting the world to the universal Zionism revolution that's happening now, and to wake up, turning Jerusalem into the capital of God in the world.
And you've seen an amazing, as we come to the end, it's amazing to see how the developments on Temple Mount, you've seen from very few Jewish people ascending Temple Mount.
When I started going up to Temple Mount 30 years ago, we were 100 Jews annually.
Wow.
In 2019, we had 50,000 Jews. But the numbers are changing not only in the Jewish visits. In 2014, there were 180,000 non-Muslim tourists on Temple Mount. In 2014, 180,000. In 2019, we had 800,000. And what happened was the harassment has been outlawed, the incitement has been outlawed, and people are more coming to Temple Mount, and it's happening. And then maybe now, because of the corona, we're going to see a little decrease in the numbers, but we'll see, I'm sure, right afterwards, it'll all come back. And
now, the other thing I need to point out, you were the executive director of the Temple Institute.
No, I was the executive director
of the Temple Institute, and they can.
And
it's still there,
now
isn't it?
I'm now the chairman of Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. The Temple Institute, of course, is working. But one of the things I kept saying is that they're building the vessels of the temple.
Right.
But we have to build the most important vessel, and that's the heart and the soul of mankind. So what they're doing is wonderful. They're writing researches on the temple, and they're preparing the actual worship in the temple, and they're practicing the actual serving of God in the temple. But I think it's time to start tuning into the world and getting the message around to the world.
And if you're interested in visiting in Temple Mount, there are certain times that it's open.
Temple Mount is open just a few times. It's open only Sunday through Thursday for non-Muslims, only just like 4 hours a day. But we're getting a lot of people in those times, and we hope maybe eventually the timelines will widen. But as I said, all the information you're welcome to contact on shalomjerusalem.org.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Been amazing talking to Rabbi Yehudah Glick.
We can't even shake hands.
It's
now.
so bad. We could do the thump or something.
They do it with the foot, with the hand. I don't know what they do it with, but
I'm hoping that this will all change, but we
maybe it's also a way of God telling people to stop touching others, to try to touch them ourselves, trying to concentrate a little bit on ourselves and be closer to God with ourselves.
That's very good. I like that. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Israel First television program. If you'd like to email us or ask questions about today's program, you can email us at info@israelfirst.org. Visit our website, www.israelfirst.org. And remember, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.